I don't know. Anyway. Poem? Poem. Not very in the right spot, is it? Poem. Yay. That's what we do here. Great transition for that one. Okay. This is called Hurricane Panic. Uh uh by author Brian Liu. I just buffered for a second. Hurricane Panic by author Brian. By Brian Liu. By author Liu. By author Brian Liu. By Brian Author. Do you have any questions, thoughts, context, things you would like to note before? I mean, you already gave a little bit, right? That this is a slightly more crafted poem of yours, which is kind of cool, right? I'm a Halloween baby, so I love the fall. Fair enough. Yeah. It should also be more important and more global quinceanera, sure. Uh, there's this song by this band called Los Campesinos. Uh, Called The Order of the Seasons. They're like this UK emo band. Off their new album. And it says like the order of the seasons depend on when you're born. I start counting winter and headed for the fall, or and heading for the fall. So it's like the way that we understand the world, the seasons is like maybe based on the season in which we were born as the first one, which is kind of like a cool little poetic thing. Yes, poem. Instantly recognizable as a metaphor to describe the sensation of a panic attack. Instantly recognizable. So instant that I don't have to do the work to recognize it. Thank you. So we have this poem that is maybe about panic attacks. Panic attacks. Hurricane Panic by author Brian Liu. I cower before the grumbling storm. It waits, threatening to open up and rain down on me, make me shiver in the cold water. Lightning flashes, and I count the time before the thunder. I could cower inside, lock my doors and stay dry, pretend to not hear the pounding of the gale, tell myself that it's just spring showers, common in March. Perhaps just an eastern wind. But I would be telling a lie. The storm will still come for me. Dread overtakes me as the storm approaches, my knees up against my chest as tears join the rain. Please, show me daylight, anything. I cover my ears against the roar of the wind, the bellowing sounds all around me. My breathing quickens, panting, hands go numb, I flex them to try to return touch. Nothing. The walls are closing in and might break, remove my shelter. The hurricane is a force of my own nature, spinning through me, not allowing my thoughts to rest, to think, to remain calm. It rolls through me, churning my soul and keeping it difficult to breathe until I think it will never end. The storm abates. I am left on the floor with my heart racing. The bitter taste in my mouth of adrenaline, defeat. Get up, I tell myself. I stand. Straighten. Prepare myself to face the day, not knowing when I can forecast the next torrent. Hurricane Panic. The short phrases have me holding my breath. I love that the single words with periods naturally made you speed up like I intended. Yes. If we we often talk about the way that the punctuation, the structure, the breaking of lines can affect, right, the way that we read a poem. And right, it's sort of beautiful that when we do this well, right, I can, on like a very first read, right, I can see this and intuitively know, like, oh, this is what they're going for. This is how it should be read. And like, I think a lot of the time, this is something I think about. The first read is often the most impactful one in some ways. I mean, this isn't always the case, because as we gain an understanding of the poem, certain things can be brought out and understood, and that's cool. But the first read has this really special thing. It's a very special moment where, these ideas are hitting you for the first time. They're new. They're exciting. And when a poem communicates what it wants to during that first read, it's a very satisfying thing. So that makes me very happy about this poem, right? We have some other sort of like structural repetitions. But I would be telling a lie. Please show me the daylight. Anything, right? Like, this is like a visual sort of consistency that we have. And, we do this again here. These like single, oh, why aren't we writing? Why aren't we writing? We're not writing. Sometimes it does this. Close it. Come back. Guys. I think it's just like, we did it. Okay. So we have like these periods again: to rest, to think, to remain calm. Slightly different though, right? We have like no period here, which is interesting. And then, but even that sort of mirrors this: defeat, get up, I tell myself. So again, we have these consistencies. It makes us sort of like parallel some structural things going on, where we have like an opening, we have like this section where we are, really digging in, and then we have like a big sudden change, and then we have like these two that sort of close us out. It is a nice shape, right? There's like 1, 2, 2, or like one short stanza, 2 slightly longer ones, 1 short stanza, 2 slightly longer ones. Just just noticing things. You think that particular no period might be a typo. It might be, but it's also consistent with this no period, and sort of maybe unifies these 2 stanzas as separate from this one, which is a parallel structure with unifying these 2 stanzas through a structural technique against this one. So, it probably works, right? Just some first thoughts, right? It's not a complete defeat if you survive it. That is very true. That is like, yeah, that's like a nice response to this poem, right? We have defeat. Sometimes a great thing we can do when we're like reading a poem, thinking about it, analyzing it, is to see something and respond. And that statement, Ishmael, almost in a way like disagrees with something in this poem. Defeat? No, it's not a complete defeat, right? You kept going. And I think sometimes looking at a poem like that and saying like, oh, actually, um, let me reframe this. Let me kind of argue in a sense with the way this poem is talking is very valuable. It tells us something about ourselves, right? Where, you know, um, you look at this thing and then like spin it toward that positive, and that's interesting, right? Gorgeous metaphor, yeah, and very like consistent, just like a one metaphor type poem. Yeah, it's a vibe. I need some cleansing breaths. Poem made me feel it. The panic. Yeah, definitely, definitely with this one. Uh, it's one that's very intense, that communicates that pace, that intensity, uh, and like having been in a panic attack, I think it does it well. I have a poem that tries to do a panic attack, not necessarily as metaphor, but like going through the thoughts immediately, uh, in the moment, um, like a stream of like the stream of consciousness of the mind within the panic attack. Uh, and I think this is very effective, and it does give you that panic, and definitely breathe. Definitely one to like step away from, if needed. If you've ever suffered a panic attack, it doesn't feel that way in the moment. Objectively later, sure, but immediately afterward, one feels like they've lost. Yeah. Um, yeah. Like you get to the end of that, and one is like empty, right? You got like taken by this storm, tossed around, thrown to the ground, and like a puppet on strings, right? And then you have to like do this, and I've definitely had like sort of like the panic attack hangover, where at like I've had what, like 2 3 panic attacks in my life. The most recent one, I was out of it for like 2 days straight. I was just exhausted. And it's like it's very dejected. It's very empty. So I think I think this does do a good job of capturing that idea. Uh, but also that maybe makes this sentiment all the more valuable as a reminder. Da, 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 da. Are you standing back and describing panic, but not describing that you're in it? Are you standing back and describing? That's a question for Brian. Both. People who have panic attacks kind of walk around with that looming. When will the next one happen? Then it happens and you're in it. Then later you're like, "Whew, it's over. When will it happen next?" Yeah. Um, yeah, and I think the poem just does it very well. Um, because you begin with this cowering, this like it's threatening, it's gonna happen, and then you're like, oh, like maybe this isn't it. You're doing this sort of like rationalization, like, oh no, it's gonna be okay. Um, maybe it's just an eastern wind. Maybe this isn't a panic attack, and I definitely understand this one where it's like creeping up and welling inside, and you're like, okay, maybe I'm just like uncomfortable right now. Maybe I'm just a little overstimulated. Maybe and then it like catapults off the edge, right? Um, and then just like the rain starts. Uh, and then as soon as you hit this, right? As soon as like this acknowledgement happens, covering the ears, it all just pours out so quickly, and then it's over. And then we're waiting again. I'm lucky enough that I don't have them regularly. Like I've had 2 or 3 in the last 3 years, 4 years. Uh, but yeah, they suck. So I don't necessarily like have the impending when will it happen next, which I'm glad for. That would suck. I used to have them a lot more. I'm glad to say I've overcome them, except in rare circumstances. That's really good. I'm proud of you for that. Is a panic attack closest you can get to doing drugs without doing drugs? Um, I mean, there are lots of these like sort of psychiatric states that are like very, very bad. And I'd say like any altered state of mind is kind of like doing drugs in that it's an altered state of mind. Uh I've had like I've only like smoked weed once, but I had like a really bad experience where I was like screaming and crying. And it was different from a panic attack. Like the because I it was like a non-awareness. Um but I'd say um you know, there's like some similarity there maybe. But a panic attack is like uh I don't know. It's different for lots of people, I guess is one thing. Um but yeah, I guess the issue is like everyone's experience with a panic attack is different. Everyone's experience with taking drugs is different. So so that just depends. It could be similar to like a bad trip in for some people probably. It's like drowning and having too much caffeine all at the same time. Yeah. Yeah. Thoughts coming in torrents and waves, like and yet not being able to move one's body and like hyperventilating for me, not crying, but like everything bottled up trying to escape through a tiny hole. you know um First time I had one I didn't know what was happening. Yeah, same. um Let us all breathe in, exhale, namaste. Yeah, breathing is good. You can't breathe because breathing hurts, but you need to breathe because you feel like you're suffocating. These descriptions of panic attacks and descriptions I listen to about certain drugs makes me believe drugs basically give you a panic attack. Uh, I mean, right, if that's all they did, people wouldn't do them. Uh, I would advise one to be very careful and with drugs. In America, drugs are just very like normalized, I think, and they're very chill to take, um, like socially, uh, and that's a very dangerous thing, I think. Um, Not because drugs are like necessarily bad or they'll kill you, like or I don't know any of that kind of stuff. Um, but I think yeah, I don't know. Just not a fan personally. Anyway, so that's some initial thoughts. I'm gonna read through it again because we've definitely wandered away from the poem, and this poem's just great as like an experience of like the moment. Um, um, like I feel like stepping away from it or even like analyzing or talking about individual lines almost moves away from that presentness, which is kind of cool. I cower before the grumbling storm. It waits, threatening to open up and rain down on me, make me shiver in the cold water. Lightning flashes, and I count the time before the thunder. I could cower inside, lock my doors and stay dry, pretend to not hear the pounding of the gale. Tell myself that it's just spring showers common in March. Perhaps just an eastern wind, but I would be telling a lie. The storm will still come for me. Dread overtakes me as the storm approaches. My knees up against my chest as tears join the rain. Please show me the daylight. Anything. I cover my ears against the roar of the wind, the bellowing sounds all around me. My breathing quickens, panting, hands go numb. I flex them to try to and return touch. Nothing. The walls are closing in and might break. Remove my shelter. The hurricane is a force of my own nature, spinning through me, not allowing my thoughts to rest, to think, to remain calm. It rolls through me, churning my soul and keeping it difficult to breathe until I think it will never end. The storm abates. I am left on the floor with my heart racing. The bitter taste in my mouth of adrenaline, defeat. Get up, I tell myself. I stand. Straighten. Prepare myself to face the day, not knowing when I can forecast the next torrent. Hurricane panic. This poem makes incredible use of, like, just the idea of breath. And the idea that, you know, a poem read out loud is subject to the duration of a human breath. Right. People talk about even like pentameter as lines that are the length of a breath to be read continuously. And the amount that we breathe and where we breathe massively affects the way that something feels. Right. So this is, again, like a technique, like a structure affecting feeling and experience. Right. And, right. Like, what is quick breathing? Quick breathing is like panting. It is like stress. It is intensity. It can definitely be like fear. It can be, I mean, in other cases outside of like this poem, like fast, heavy breathing, that can be very like passionate. That can be angry, right? That can be, you know, like the heart racing. This can even be like love. This is like a very visceral, intense reaction. And then like slow breathing is, you know, maybe the counter opposite of many of these things. Calm, control, measured, intentional, that kind of stuff. So breath and the way we breathe can allude to, can indicate certain feelings. And sort of the beautiful thing about, in this case, another person reading your poem is if they choose to read this out loud, like I chose to read this out loud, you can force, right, this quick breathing onto the reader. And breathing has like a very literal, physiological, like, effect on the body, right? If you force yourself, like Kathzik was saying, to slow down, to breathe, namaste, you'll calm yourself down. And if you force yourself to breathe quickly, I don't know, if any of you are sitting there behind your screen feeling too calm, like force yourself to pant and breathe quickly, and like my breathing quickens, panting, hands go numb, like it immediately like signals to like the whole nervous system that like something is wrong, right? It goes both ways, where if something is wrong, you'll breathe quickly. if you make yourself breathe quickly, your body will feel like something is wrong. So when you force the reader, right, like to read out loud in this way, you bring them into the experience. You force them to be present in your panic attack. This is why it can be very good to read things out loud. Sometimes they concern breath and they concern this like very physical aspect. But I don't think that just exists in this moment. I think you do a very good job of setting this up. And I think it has to do both with, as you say, Brian, the enter key and with punctuation, right? Both of these things are the things we use to signal breath in writing, right? At a period, you can kind of like always breathe. A period is a safe space to breathe because it's the end of a thought. Usually, like in terms of reading something, if I'm reading something out loud to somebody, and I like stop, I can probably stop for like 5 seconds, 10 seconds even, to like take a few breaths, to drink some water at a period. And like the comprehension of that reading or that listening won't be decreased. If you try to like do that at a comma, like things can feel very weird, right? Semicolon, colon, M dash, whatever. They're less safe as places to breathe. Where if I'm in the middle of a sentence and I try to stop and take a breath, like at a comma, then I might like lose some of the meaning of the sentence. And just saying this as someone who like reads aloud a lot. There's like an understanding of this. You get to a period, I can breathe now. and the other space to do that is a break, a line break, particularly in poetry, where, or not even a line break, also like it's very popular to have some words and then have a space and then have some other words. This seems to be like stylistically popular in modern poetry, where like poems will kind of look like this, 3 words here, a break, a word here, a break. These are places we can like potentially breathe. And I think this poem is signaling to us like where to breathe from the beginning, right? I cower before the grumbling storm. Period. It's one idea. It is one thought. It's a full sentence. It says something. It's over, right? I cower before the grumbling storm. It waits, threatening to open up and rain down on me. So it waits, like almost signals us with the language to wait, to take another moment. So we have like full thought, breath, full thought, breath, because we're going to wait with it waiting. Threatening to open up and rain down on me. That's about a full breath. Breath. Make me shiver in the cold water. Like, these are all a pretty decent length to just take a breath at the end of every line. Lightning flashes and I count the time before the thunder. No period here. So I read it, I think, both times as like going through this line. Goodbye, Ishmael. Sleep well. So then this is also like the longest line we have, or the longest breath we have, because it continues through, that much space. It's just more syllables. And so it makes this stop at the end of the stanza like a very punctual place. I cower before the grumbling storm. It waits, threatening to open up and rain down on me, make me shiver in the cold water. Lightning flashes, and I count the time before the thunder. I could cower inside, lock my doors and stay dry, pretend to not hear the pounding of the gale. Tell myself that it's just spring showers common in March. Like, we have this very just like, here's a statement, here's a statement, here's a statement. Here's a statement. Here's the end of a statement, right? And so we're almost setting up the reader to expect to take a breath after like every line, where it's just sort of the natural thing to do at the beginning of this poem, to take breaths at periods, to take breaths mostly at the end of lines. So then, when we've like created that expectation in the reader, and then we have and you're like, what, like it totally like messes up everything in a beautiful way, where you're like, what do I do? Do I breathe here? Do I not breathe here? Because now I have a period telling me to breathe. I have the end of a line telling me to breathe. And I have like a fully incomplete thought, right? Anything period is a complete thought. It waits is a complete thought. So we know we can sit, we can take a breath, we can rest here. But then you're like, okay, well now I really want to move on because there's suspense. I need to know my what. Right? It doesn't make sense on its own. But I want to breathe because I'm being told to breathe. And then it's like breathing quickens. And you're like, oh, that's what's happening. My breathing is quickening because I'm like breathing after every thing, but I'm trying to move forward. And it's like this tension, like Nikki described, wanting to breathe, not being able to breathe, having to breathe because you're suffocating. Like it so effectively, places this experience onto the reader, right? My breathing quickens, panting, hands go numb. I flex them to try and return touch. Nothing. The walls are closing in and might break. Remove my shelter. The hurricane is a force of my own nature, spinning through me, not allowing my thoughts to rest, to think, to remain calm. And like here, right, like no period. And yet, like, we push into to remain calm. So we go, like, to think, to remain calm, as we're, like, getting more intense. And it's, like, playing with, like, the internal contradictions of, like, the meaning of the lines, reflecting the breathing or not reflecting the breathing. And then, like, we get here to the very end of the panic attack. Churning my soul and keeping it difficult to breathe until I think it will never end. Honestly, I think it's a typo, but it works. Yeah, it works. Keep it, right? And this is the longest breath in the whole poem, which is like perfect, right? We don't have any periods, so we've created the expectation to like move through those lines, especially after these like period kind of sentences. And so what that means is, for like the first time since here, the poem allows us to fully exhale, to like fully use the entirety of our human breath after all of this hyperventilation. And that's what the end of a panic attack is, right? To like finally exhale and then take a big breath in. The storm abates, right? And it's really only after that full exhale, that full inhale, that like the panic attack is truly over. And then that's our next line. It's it's great. I am left on the floor with my heart racing. This line is a little faster, or these two lines. This is one breath going through two lines. We're talking about the heart racing. It's that little bit of residual energy, right? The bitter taste in my mouth of adrenaline. But we're calming down, right? Defeat, and it sucks and it's heavy because it's like defeat. Very abstract concept for this very present poem. But it gets us to like stop, right? Defeat. Get up, I tell myself. I stand. And interesting, this is the only period we have in the middle of the line. I stand. Straighten. Right? And I think this, like, that makes this, like, so, like, powerful. Because like we've gone from curled, we've gone from prone, we've gone from battered by the storm to standing and then straightening, like all at once. And it's like that final like release. And then prepare myself to face the day, not knowing when I can forecast the next torrent. And this is actually the longest breath in the poem. This was the longest one at the time, but then this one is longer. And it's like, so now we're back to this like big motion. Prepare myself to face the day, not knowing when I can forecast the next torrent. Right? It has a pace to it, the pace of life, the pace of moving on. And it maybe feels a little too fast to be a conclusion, where it does like have this little bit of jitteriness to it, right? Forecast the next torrent. We have this like rhyme, this like slant rhyme that we kind of just end on. Face the day, right? Prepare myself to face the day, not knowing. That's alliteration. When I can forecast the next. And then we have, even next and can. Not knowing when I can forecast the next torrent. And then like, however it also works if I make the N lowercase and leave it. Yeah, I do think that might be good. There should be a period after day, actually, because I have a capital N there. Yeah, you could do either one. Prepare myself to face the next day. Not knowing when I can forecast the next torrent. I think that leaves us a little more resolved. It leaves us a little more stable. If we do a lowercase n and a no period, right? Comma is interesting because we haven't used a comma in the whole poem. It might somewhat signal. I don't know if you want the best of both worlds here, Brian. It could work. We can read it that way too. But when we push all the way through, I think it gives this lingering anxiety, this motion. It doesn't feel fully resolved. It gives that feeling of like it's gonna come back, and that's uncomfy, right? When we have the period capital N, it's more stable, which, maybe works. Prepare myself to face the day. Like, I think if there was a comma there, I would want to breathe, personally. Where, like, I would see that, and it would signal breath. Because this is enough that, like, we're starting to be out of breath. And so a comma would signal that to me. M dash. Prepare myself to face the day, not knowing. I like an M dash more than comma. But okay, so M dashes aren't your style, so don't use an M dash. That's fine. I think I'm most partial to the no period, right? You said like best of both worlds. We have like period here on the spectrum. This tells us to like take a whole ass break, right? And then we have like nothing here, which tells us to push through. And I think this also like kind of corresponds with this being the most anxious and this being the most stable, right? And I guess it depends on how much you want to depict the anxiety of waiting. I think because of the intensity of this poem and like the degree to which you make the reader uncomfortable, and like the way you just describe this as like this impending horrible thing that's gonna come back, and it's like, when will it happen, right? I think my preference would be to lean toward more anxious. I think that's more effective to like the feeling that you're trying to, that you like mentioned, capturing. The anxiety of waiting is the goal. Okay, then I think to me it's here, right? Lowercase n, no period. Because then we're just plowing through that. Prepare myself to face the day, not knowing when I can forecast the next torrent. And it leaves us a little out of breath. It leaves us a little bit like quieter. So it's calm, but it's a little uncomfortable. It's, yeah, I think it gets the feeling well to me. That's probably the move. Oh, all this intense breathing has me very like, you know, it's a very like dysregulating poem. It's awesome. Da, 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 da. M dashes interruption. Yeah, they can be. M dashes are interesting to me because like I have a love-hate relationship with the M dash. Okay. I'm just gonna talk about this because it's like interesting to me, and I just thought of something which I haven't thought about. The M dash, right? I would say that in most modern writing, I'm gonna draw a graph, that like the M dash has largely maybe like fallen in usage, maybe with the exception of AI, where this is like amount of M dash and this is time. I feel like the M dash used to be more like popular in writing before, and even in poetry. I mean, maybe that's just because I think of Emily Dickinson, but I think in like common writing, like the M dash is a fairly unfamiliar punctuation to most people. I don't recall ever being taught the M dash in school, which makes it like a little bit obscure, right? And that means to me, like, this is very important because I read the M dash, or I used to read the M dash, and maybe I still don't have a good idea of what it signals. Where, like, sometimes the M dash is like an interruption, sometimes and like a cutoff, like you say in theater. Sometimes it's a clarification. Sometimes poets, especially in like poetry, just use it for space, to take a breath, or they use it to continue. I've heard the M dash described as a river, right, where it keeps going forward, and yet, like, how does an M dash push us forward and also slow us down? I mean, maybe the comma does that sometimes, and it's a contextual thing, but the M dash can be kind of vague sometimes. I think part of that is because of like a generally low prevalence of it, and that it's like not taught very well. It's not really like I don't remember ever being told about the M dash in the thing, you know. Um, I think of it as being between a comma and an ellipsis. Interesting. So you would go comma, M dash, ellipsis, period, something like that. In terms of like breath lengths, maybe semicolon in between here. See, like, I don't know. I don't know if that's where I put the M dash. um, like sometimes for me, an M dash is more abrupt than a comma within writing. Um, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes the M dash is like longer than an ellipsis, you know, and like it's very vague. It's very flexible. Um, Maybe that's where like if you use it enough, you develop your own style, and people start to recognize how you use the M dash, and that's valuable. Um, so I love the M dash for its flexibility. You can like just put it places, and it's kind of cool. It's a very visually striking punctuation, right? Like in terms of visuals, right? M dash, ellipsis, probably like question marks and exclamation points. Um, these things like stick out from the page very strongly. What other punctuations? Looking at my keyboard. Um, like parentheses stick out in a similar way on a page. Slashes are very eye-catching in poetry, right? And maybe just because all of this is less common. But the M dash is really, I like it for that, that it like really jumps off the page at you. Uh, but I think sometimes like it jumps off and it's like, what do I do with this now? You know? um, I found out something a few days ago. Oh, you're late to the party. Apparently M dash is a big signal that it was AI written. Yeah. AI does like M dashes, and they have a reputation for that now, which um like uh I used to use the ellipsis, but AI happened and I started using them ironically and discovered I actually liked them. Yeah, I've used more M dashes since M dash became a regular part of discourse. Um, and uh, and I think that makes this graph make sense, right? That like before, when no one was talking about the M dash, I used M dashes less. Now M dashes are more just commonly known, so I'm more inclined to use them. But they still have an unclear connotation and context, so they're not always the best, right? That's where I'm at. There's a big fist fight among students of literature as to whether a comma is a moment to pause / breathe, or if it's overused. Um, yeah, I mean, people will always argue. I think the best thing is to use any technique, any punctuation, anything in the way that feels most effective for communicating your art. And if it feels good, do it. Um, like this is actually maybe the most important thing. Like it doesn't matter if everyone is using the M dash or if AI is using the M dash. It only matters if when you sit down and write and you put an M dash on the page, if it feels good, right? And if the M dash feels good, or if the exclamation point feels good. There's an author named Larry Levis who uses the ampersand sometimes for and it's sometimes very effective. And if it works, and if you use it, then use it. And if you don't like it, like don't make yourself use it, right? Yeah, a little soapbox there. One of those moments that would be like good to clip if my face wasn't like in the corner of the screen. Um, Um, uh, yeah, like you say, Nikki, you just use what you like. Exactly. I think I've used them exclusively in prose and theater's interruptions. I never use them in poems, it seems, and that's cool, you know? C'est un plaisir de vous rencontrer. Hi, Callie. I don't know what that means. Um, yeah, and I mean, this poem's very impressive because it uses exclusively the period. And that's an argument for not using the comma as well at the end. Is this thing only uses periods? Um, and the way that you pace things so well with just like sort of the most basic stop, very cool. I do like that. It means it's a pleasure to meet you. Awesome. Well, it's a pleasure to have you here, Callie. uh I feel like that brief and intense conversation is quite suitable for this poem. Um and I'm not sure there's actually that much I want to say outside of it. Um this poem is also quite exhausting, right? Where even just like reading it a couple times and talking about it is like, whoa, that takes a lot because it's very intense. So, if there are any other questions, we can address those, and if anyone has thoughts or comments or questions or things that you would like for me to dig into, then we can do that. Um, or we can just do, well, I'm not going to skip the final read, Brian. We will do the final read. Um, but if there are no questions and comments, then I will do a final read, and and then that will be that. You know, I'm glad you like it. I think you can tell it feels more crafted than my other stuff you've seen. Yeah, yeah, like sometimes the other stuff, has like lines that feel like they don't need to be there. We've talked about that about some of your poems. Um, or just like things that repeat in like I'm going to go back to this. I want to think of the line, the storm is a force of my own nature, rather than just force of nature. That's interesting. Um, that's, where is that? um, I feel like, is that a line in here? Oh, the hurricane is a force of my own nature. Oh, I didn't even like see that. I feel like the individual lines even like get lost to the vibe of the poem. Uh, and that's good, right? That's cool. Um, I think my own nature is better than of nature. That's incredible, right? It's my own nature because it reflects me and it reflects my nature. It's my own nature because um, it's sort of like of me, and like I have created this thing within my own mind. And then it still implies force of nature because it's a play on the original phrase. So it's like um it gives that feeling of like it is strong and I'm helpless before it. Um I wanted to know what you thought of me messing with the phrase. Yeah, I mean it's great because when you mess with a phrase, you often still imply the original. Um where if you spin something, the mind will, of course, recall, oh, force of nature, that's what this means. But we've elaborated on it. So we create a double meaning through the old association and the new association. Uh, and that's super, super sick, right? That's dope, um, to do that. Uh, yeah. Let's It's amazing that it didn't even register that I did that with it because you said the vibe just made it just go through. Yeah, that part of the poem is so intense. Um, But I think it speaks that none of those lines stick out as not fitting with the vibe. So they all like contribute to the vibe. And that's really good, right? Here is, after a short analysis, but that's okay, Hurricane Panic. And we'll be done with it. Because there's a freaking ad coming up. Hurricane Panic. I cower before the grumbling storm. It waits, threatening to open up and rain down on me, make me shiver in the cold water. Lightning flashes and I count the time before the thunder. I could cower inside, lock my doors and stay dry, pretend not to hear the pounding of the gale. I tell myself that it's just spring showers common in March. Perhaps an eastern wind. But I would be telling a lie. The storm will still come for me. Dread overtakes me as the storm approaches. My knees up against my chest as tears join the rain. Please show me daylight. Anything. I cover my ears against the roar of the wind. The bellowing sounds all around me. My breathing quickens, panting. Hands go numb. I flex them to try and return touch. Nothing. The walls are closing in and might break. Remove my shelter. The hurricane is a force of my own nature, spinning through me, not allowing my thoughts to rest, to think, to remain calm. It rolls through me, churning my soul and keeping it difficult to breathe until I think it will never end. The storm abates. I am left on the floor with my heart racing, the bitter taste in my mouth of adrenaline. Defeat. Get up, I tell myself. I stand, straighten, prepare myself to face the day, not knowing when I can forecast the next torrent. Hurricane Panic by AuthorBrianLou. Thank you so much for submitting. What a banger.